Hey everybody, welcome back. Thank you again for joining me here today in my wife and I's lovely forever world here in Vintage Story. Um, you guys have been exceptionally kind in the comments of the library video. I just got done, literally just got done going through all the comments and replying to everybody. You guys are all fantastic. My wife has been absolutely giddy over the interaction. So thank you guys so much. I greatly appreciate it, and she does too. Um, Today's video is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be much closer to my 250 subscriber air quote special that I did, in that we're going to be talking more generally. Somebody named, I think, Kepler, if I'm remembering correctly, I just got done looking, has actually asked if I have done a video on larger builds, planning them out, conceptualizing them, and things of that nature. Uh, so I figured, you know what? I got some free time right now. Let's see if I can bust this out in my usual style. This is going to be a little bit more edited because I got to jump around more in the world to like showcase different things. So again, feel free to skip around yourself to find whatever is interesting. I do tend to ramble, but today I'm going to try to be more focused and more educational. I may still fall off into tangents and jokes. So when that happens, just feel free to skip ahead a couple seconds. Um, but Kepler asked about planning larger builds, and I'm not really a mega build guy. Like even in Minecraft, in creative mode, I wouldn't do mega builds, which I'm not sure is what this person is after. Anyway, um, like if you want a one-to-one replication of a real-world cathedral, like something that takes 400 fucking hours to do, I'm the wrong fucking idiot to ask. Just to say, like if you want me to do it, I'll do it, but it's gonna take some work. But I can definitely talk about how you want to avoid building a giant empty box that you don't even know what to put into it, which is kind of something I talk about in general with my building. Is that a lot of my builds specifically should have a purpose and a function, and a lot of my constructions are built around that. So things that might need more space, like salting, I might make that building literally bigger just so I have more surface area to throw down barrels. I might have more taller. I might have taller walls in a warehouse so I can stack more crates up against it, or have trunks up against the wall. So there are things like that that go into deciding how big a building is. But we can talk about big builds in a very different way. And we're going to hop around here at different builds. I'm going to talk about them, show them off. If you like what you see, please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you have anything to contribute, please add to the discussion down in the comments. This is a shared learning space, so we can all contribute to each other. Even if you take something from me, leave something down in the comments so I can take it from you. You know, a little quid pro quo, or whatever the Latin would be. Um, I want to understand this correctly, because we usually, before I switch over and get out of this intro area, big can mean very different things. You can have very different scales. So, like, a building can be big in the idea that it has a large footprint, large surface area, like it's wide on the terrain. It can be super tall and even skinny, much akin to like a tower, a lighthouse, or a bell tower or something. It can be big in the amount of detail it has, its scale, right? Like, if it's super compact with a lot of detail, I would argue that's a form of being big. It can be big in its function, as in it does a lot, or that what it does, it can do a lot of it. Like my winery, for example, I could just have one fruit press. I've opted for five. Technically, I could turn that into a factory and have 10 rows of 5 fruit presses and mass produce my stuff. And then also tying into that, like how these things connect, how they work together. A system of smaller builds, air quote, can become a big build if they're all interconnected and related in some way. And then also, if you're just building a lot of smaller things all over a large area, that whole point becomes a big build. Like, one house is not a big build. One regular house is definitely not a mega build. But if you put 800 regular houses on your fucking world, you have a settlement, a county of, some kind of civilization brewing there. And there's also like the big idea of future potential, leaving open room so you have potential to add things that culminate in being big. You don't necessarily need to fill every empty space in your world. Sure, you can endeavor for that, terraform 100 square, like every 100% every square inch of your area, but you don't have to do that. So I just want to say, like I have not done mega builds, but I do constantly think about different forms of scale inside Vintage Story, and it's not always about raw size. Giggity. Alright, so I was debating which builds to show you guys to kind of make my various points, and I'm heavily against planning in general. I really don't even plan my videos, so it's funny that I get asked, like, how do you plan and conceptualize things at all? Because a big motif of my build style is that I really don't plan beyond, like in my 250 subscriber special, if you want to reference that video, and I've said it a bunch of other times, but asking questions before you build. What is this building going to be doing? What purpose does it serve? What role does it fill? How much space is actually here for me to do this build? Does that conflict with anything else? Does it make sense for this to go here? How does this relate to other resources and production chains and ease of movement? There's all kinds of questions I ask that ultimately narrow down as I come up with the solutions, and then it usually results in the build. So, like I said, my settlement is a bunch of smaller builds. There's a few bigger ones, but I can't call them big. And I just approach it I hate to say it, like one block at a time, honestly, is I get a general footprint. Like I'll just do a rectangle or a couple squares and kind of figure out what to go, like what my shape is going to be. And then I have to see if the stuff I want to have in this building will work there conveniently. So let's take a look at, I'm going to show this brinery, which I've made a video on before, so I don't feel bad showcasing it in the video. But this is a very small build. Like, this is just a regular size ass building. I mean, like, there's nothing special about this. So I don't even know like where to begin. I am utilizing outside space. The inside of this is not fully the footprint of the building, which is another thing to talk about. Is like everything that the building does not have to be on the inside of it. And that may seem obvious to a lot of you, but you'll be surprised how many people try to like keep their luggage packed away inside the container. It's okay to let things spill out. Giggity. The brinery is very small, okay? And so this is an example of, I would say, an average build. But what is the point in scaling this up and spending all the resources to make a really big build if there's nothing to put into it? Like, before you start building bigger, you need to figure out what smaller things work together and what a small build looks like. If you make a building like this to do, let's say you make a tannery, okay, and it's to do your tanning stuff. You need all these barrels and everything, and it works, and it does what it's supposed to do. It serves its purpose, but you think it's lacking in its appearance, like it doesn't look as good, it's not as decorated. If you try to scale up and do bigger builds, all you're going to do is scale up that problem. Okay, I've talked about before about having dead space. Okay, I keep using that term. I'll go ahead and just solidify it. Dead space is a space that could be utilized and is not being utilized in some form. Okay, like in the previous last videos, I'm talking about the library, the skylights. Okay, that is not dead air. That air is being used. But if you look up here at the ceiling of the brinery, I could have made this flat, but then I'd have a flat ceiling, and that flat surface would also be dead space. If these walls didn't have stuff on them, that would be what I would call dead space. Now, when you're doing Vintage Story, although there's not crafting stations like in Minecraft, you do need a lot of storage. You need access to those resources, and there are some in-world crafting recipes, like you have to do things in a barrel, for instance, okay? So some of your space inside your build is literally going to be consumed by function. Your dead space will be occupied by the function of the game mechanics. You can make your build 100% that. Like, my brinery here could literally just be a box with a roof on it, filled to the brim with crates of salt and a water point and buckets, and then the barrels with which I make the brine and do the salting and pickling and what have you. Obviously, I want it to look a little bit more pizzazzed than that, so I made it look like it's some kind of functional kitchen, which I can go over in more detail about this build in the build video if you want to go back and look at it. But having these decorations and stuff up on the wall removes that dead space. If you scale this building up 4 times, you have 4 times as much dead space you're going to have to contend with. Now, making the ceiling look busy with structural bits like beams and and chiseled deep arc logs, and like the kind of tricks I'm doing here to make it look like the ceiling is actually wrapped together with the walls of the building, like it's actually, nailed together. That comes from my background as a construction worker, okay? You don't have to do that. You could totally make this flat or make it more ornate or vaulted in some kind of way, but I avoid having just seeing the ceiling of the underneath of the roof blocks. I hate seeing those, and I hate having a flat ceiling in most of my builds. So I usually end up with what I call dead air, and because I don't want to put storage up there. You can in some contexts, but usually it's hard to access. So making that look busy and structural is a nice way to make this stop looking like a box and more like a rather rectangular looking building. Scaling up, you're going to also have to do that same thing, except now your beams are longer, and your beams can't actually go much longer, because if you're going to try to follow physics and let it appeal to your eye and not give you an uncanny valley feeling, you're going to have to add vertical supports and stuff like that, and cross trusses and all this other timber to make it look structural. Otherwise, it would look kind of floaty, which in some cathedrals and stuff, like in real life, they have a lot of open space above them, but the ceilings are vaulted in stone and very structural, it's falling into itself, and you can see that when you look up at it. At least I do. When I look up at a building, I can see how it is setting against itself. This is load bearing. The windows would be load bearing. That kind of stuff just speaks to me. And so when you're doing that at this scale, it's rather easy. You just fill this dead space, put some stuff down here, and make it look good. But if you can't do it at this scale, you are not going to be able to do it for a mega build or even a rather large build in Vintage Story, because, as I said in the comment to Kepler, Vintage Story's concept of big, because of how time intensive and resource intensive building is more about the detail that you do. It's not really about the size of things, it's about the depth. The depth is where Vintage Story gets big. Okay, the world is big, absolutely massive. Not as infinite as Minecraft's world generation, but it's huge, okay? Your job is to make it look lived in, occupied, settled, colonized. At least, that's the framing of it. You're here to build shit. You got to facilitate your survival, okay? So doing a small build is definitely something you want to hammer out. You want to get that figured out before you ever think about scaling up. If you think doing a small build is daunting, you're going to have a hard time doing a large build. And I hate to simplify it, but I really argue that whatever your approach is for building small, you should be able to just scale that up. It's just going to take more resources and stuff like that. And here later in the video, I'll talk more about planning in more detail. But the fact that I can make this brinery cluttered and maneuverable and functional and also decorated and make it look like it has culture and history to it, that is something you want to hammer down and get nailed in before you try to scale up. Okay, that'd be my first lesson. That is really the biggest takeaway for this. And really, I can just fly over here back to the library to talk another thing about size. Okay, because we have... I don't even have to edit this. Bam! We transitioned over here. Nice edit. Thank you, chat. Better be careful saying transitioned in America these days. Jesus Christ. Over here is the library. It is one of our bigger builds, okay? It is not the biggest build, but it is rather robust, okay? How do I talk to you about planning and conceptualizing this? I honestly can't, because it's the same layout as I mentioned with the brinery. What needs to be done here? Well, for my wife, what needed to be done here is it needed to look like a library. Okay, so we know we're going to have bookshelves. You need surface area to put the bookshelves on. So obviously we're going to want rather tall walls. So already out the gate, we're getting a sense of scale. We need, or at least want, it to be taller than the player, so at least 3 blocks of room. You might want a little bit of headroom for the ceiling, so now you're getting at 4 blocks for your internal space of height. So just doing the math like that, figuring out how you want it to be experienced, that right there, on top of already adding if this wasn't a library, if this was our tannery, you'd have the barrels and buckets and knives and tool racks and all that stuff in there. Those functional mechanical systems will take up space. But then to take up further space, you want it, not to take up further space, but in how much space is being taken up and what space is available to you, you also want to take into consideration how you want to experience it, is what I was getting at. So in here, we did not want this to be super narrow. We didn't want it to be grandiose and super wide. That would have felt off scale compared to all the other buildings. You can't have the library be too big in comparison to everything else. If I have the Library of Alexandria sitting next to, I don't know, Whiterun from Skyrim, as it's represented with its like 7 total buildings, that's going to feel out of scale, out of place, okay? So like if I had a really wide hallway or walkway here, that would feel weird in the scale of this building. If I made it too narrow, it would feel more claustrophobic, which in some contexts, again, I say is good. In a library like this, you want an airy open space. You don't want it to feel cramped and damped, okay? So we've ultimately settled on about a 2-block wide walkway. So now we got about a width for the walkways. We want it to be about that all the way around, which we have achieved. But that leaving us this space to walk around. Now, of course, she did this passion pit over here, so it changed the floor plan a little bit. But it added depth and variety and height. It made it seem like there's even more going on, even though this is just 1 block difference in height. Sorry, I had a cough, couldn't avoid it. But since we got the walkways figured out, now we know, like, okay, we have spaces here. Well, how many bookshelves can we fit in this space and it still be navigable? Navigability is super important. If your audience cannot even get into the theater, it doesn't matter how good your fucking movie is, right? So if I can't even get in here and walk around the building to access the stuff I need to access and look at the stuff I need to look at, it doesn't matter what the rest of it is. I'm going to have such a poor time navigating it that I might not even be able to easily navigate it. And that's less important with stuff where people can just take your time and walk around it and look at a creative build. But like if you're in a situation where you need to quickly get from one spot to another because like you're defending something in a roleplay server, or your factory is set up and you got to move this thing from that thing, and like there's all kinds of stuff that can be taken in consideration for navigability, like where your stuff is located, which kind of ties into my thought process about systems. How I said systems can be a part of it being big. I usually think in forms of production chains. So like this building is a bad example, it doesn't do anything, but we have this building that through various means we have narrowed down what the scale is going to be. We have the walls to fit the bookshelves, we have the walkways, and then basically it was a matter of boxing that up, the inside. We boxed the inside that we conceptualized up into a literal just rectangle. This was a rectangle, the whole thing. And then we kind of chiseled away at it. And that's how we kind of got this terrace. That's how the wall became, set in 1 block. That's how the roof came about. And then, I needed a place to put the observatory, so we just threw it on that corner. As you are conceptualizing and planning out the build, you should be answering a lot of your own questions. But you've got to ask yourself questions as you're going through. How much space do I need? Is this navigable? Can this go here? Does it make sense for us to store this here? Does this decorative item actually make sense to be on this wall at this location? Stuff like that gets asked, and that added with where does my barrel go? Where do I want this building to be in relation to other buildings? Should help you plan your large build. So oh god, that frame rate died trying to look at all this. This started off as just our house, okay? But because we kept finding new resources and progressing further in the game, our needs expanded. And because our needs expanded, the base obviously expanded. Now, you can do the school of thought where you just kind of keep everything in the house. You just have like a really tall house or a compact compound. But we like kind of having it spread it out. And so, because we did that, it made the estate feel bigger. Okay, like the actual points of interest, like some of them are kind of close, like the bakery. Oh god, moving around here is going to be hell. The bakery is rather close to the house, right? And then the farming stuff is kind of close to itself. And then the winery, like alcohol stuff is kind of close to itself. But that cluster of like alcohol over there is close to the farm cluster. And the farm cluster is close to like the villa cluster, like this is our recreational area. And also the bakery, because the stuff goes into the bakery. And then we have a tree farm over there, which is not being used right now. But that wood production area ties into our charcoal area, which then ties into the rest of like our building storage. And this used to be our workshop, which has expanded further that way and is now near our factory. And the graduation tower and the chemical plant and the textile shops are over there. Like it all kind of breeds from itself and flows from itself. And so, like, I'm talking about a system here. This is a scale. Like, each thing had a need for it. But you can think of a single building, if you want to narrow it back down to that, as a form of how I treated this estate. What function is each room in this building going to do? Are you building a castle? Okay, well, you're going to need some place for the king to sit. He's going to need some kind of quarters to sleep. Maybe they need a war room. Where does the kitchen staff sleep? Where is the kitchen at? How do they cook food? Where do people actually dine? How do you get into the castle? What kind of walls are going to be around this castle? And of course, like, what's the technological level of advancement here for this society or this culture, whatever? Like, can they use stone? Is it just timber pylons shoved into the ground to make a palisade? What extent can they go? And then, like, is there going to be a drawbridge? Is there just going to be a regular bridge? Like, there's all kinds of different questions you ask, and depending on the answer you get, that should help narrow down the planning and conceptualizing, like, in your head. And another thing that also helps, which I haven't really touched on yet, is looking for historical inspiration, okay? And not even really historical. I would say real world from any period of time. And you can actually even just steal from other media. Like I've said before, let me go over here. These charcoal pits, okay? This is not an example of big, but I take these from playing games like Banished and Age of Empires and Farthest Frontier, those RTS games, because a lot of their charcoal kiln building assets that you can unlock are usually just like stone or dirt domes that they put firewood in, and then charcoal comes out, and like that's the production logic. So I kind of just made the in-game one look like the ones I've seen in other games. And people were really good at doing this in Minecraft. I don't really see them so much do it in Vintage Story. Maybe it's just because Minecraft has been around longer and there's more people playing it, so it's just literally a numbers game. But I remember back when Minecraft was really big, Skyrim had just come out. And everybody was doing like one-to-one recreations of like the Skyrim map or a certain Skyrim building or just recreating a Nordic style. And I don't see that so much in this game, but you are absolutely free. Like if you want to build a big-ass castle, you can go look at Norman or Czechoslovakian castles. Like go play Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 or something like that, or even just look at the pictures online of those castles and get inspiration for your build. You're doing a cathedral, look up cathedrals on the internet and look at how they're set up and everything. If you can, some cities, like, it's public information. You can access like the floor plan and the plumbing plan and like maybe like the fire code hazard stuff and actually see the floor plan of the building, and that will help you lay it out. And even if you don't do it a one-to-one, just seeing how real world architects and engineers and people approach the same problems you're encountering yourself in the game would be a good, easy way for you to have a solution. Even if you don't take the answer one-to-one, you could adapt their answer to your situation, which I'm a big proponent of improvising and adapting to overcome a problem. I really have covered a lot just kind of flying around here talking about this in general. It's mostly about the form needs to fit the function. So Kepler, like, are you building a big castle? Or are you going to build a big city? Or do you want your house to be very ornate? Because although I call this a villa, this house could be bigger, but I like to think that this house is fairly large in Vintage Story terms. But in the grand scheme of things, this house probably is not that big in like Minecraft terms. You know what I mean? So like I don't know what games you're coming from. Like even building in games like Valheim or 7 Days to Die or I can't think of any others, but other games where you build things outside of the cubed games. Like whatever your background is going to change how you approach the problem. And so I would really need to know, and you would need to figure out, what do you want it to look like? What kind of feeling do you want to get from it? And that's only the kind of question that I myself ask after I've taken care of the function. What does this building need to do? And for a lot of you, building the thing is like the whole point. Like I've said this before, once you have survival covered in these survival building games, the whole point that, like, you didn't beat the game just because you completed the story. You didn't beat the game just because you reached steel. There's no way to beat this game. The whole point is to build stuff and expand and make the world your own, lay claim over it, which kind of sounds like a very colonizing mindset. But it's a video game, and you're in this setting where there's nothing, and your character has to survive. And then here you are surviving. Now what do? You build pyramids. You build statues. You build massive aqueducts. You erect coliseums. I have not gotten to the point of doing mega builds like as an isolated thing. I don't have a giant coliseum. I do have this massive estate. And I do have other builds in other parts of this world that we're working on that I also want to be big. But I don't know if it's my autism or my ADHD or just my world experience, or maybe it is a genuine combination of all these things going together. But I have this recursive thought process where everything kind of kaleidoscopes and Matryoshka dolls in on itself and around itself. So to me, Big doesn't really have to be tall, doesn't have to be wide. It can be big in its aura, it can be big in its purpose, it can be big in how it connects to everything. For instance, like my house. The house over here is set up in a certain way. Okay, I'll go ahead and fly over here and talk about it this way. The house, no matter the scale, you're going to need rooms that perform roles, okay? This one, what role does this perform? In a real house, this is your entry room. This is where you kick off your boots and we kind of have it set up like that to visualize that in the game for decoration purposes. But mostly this is where we can drop off loot and pick up new tools and just kind of handle our shit before going back out and doing things, or drop off something to handle later, okay? What does a real house have that you don't necessarily need in Vintage Story or Minecraft? A bathroom, right? We have this super decorated, and I'm going to do a full tour on all this at some point, but it's super decorated. But what point does this serve in the game? Well, here's a water source, and here's storage for various things. Like, those kind of questions get asked by me, and then I ultimately build it. So, like, this bathroom does something. This entry room does something. Obviously, the kitchen does what a kitchen is supposed to do. This room technically doesn't really do anything. It's just more storage and it's ambience and it connects to other rooms. But there is alcohol storage here in the corner. So, like, this is a zone. The bathroom is a zone. This is a zone. The kitchen's a zone. These zones can scale up or even scale down, I would argue, mostly indefinitely, okay? If you had a 4-block like room, you had 2x2 room, and you had you and then 3 stacks of things all the way up in there, those are your zones. They're very compact, it's very non-navigable, you're very limited, but those you have your building sectioned off into zones. Here's our bedroom, that's another zone. Upstairs is more storage, that's another zone. Over here is where we keep papers and stuff, that's another zone. These zones connect together. They're small on their own. It's just a room, just one interior, one small scale room. But when you connect them together, the build gets bigger. And then so if you zoom out of the house, as I've already, if I can fly, geez, as I already talked about before, the house is a zone. The bakery is a zone. The farm's a zone. The winery area is a zone. These zones connect and form a bigger zone, which is our estate. Technically, I just flew through the windmill. Technically, we're not done yet, but we're expanding the estate to have colonies and things like that. And I'll fly over here and show you something else here in a second too that I want to talk about. This video is going to be much longer than the others, I'm suspecting. But this estate is going to have docks and storage areas and warehouses and little villas and stuff spreading out from it along roads that are coming from it and connecting to other areas. And so because of that, now the estate is a zone. And my north dock is a zone. My village where I'm going to put all my traders is a zone. The fishing shack area is a zone. My gas station build is a zone. You know what I mean? The west dock, the south dock. Now I have all these different zones that come together, and you could argue this is a county or a kingdom or a civilization or whatever. So what do you mean by big is what I keep coming back to. Because how do you define big? There's so many different ways you can go about it. But planning and conceptualizing, I'll just fly out of here, are rather consistent. Because again, it's just a block game. You can scale up. And it's like kind of like a scale model. Like whatever, and this is kind of loosely applied here, mostly whatever you do for a scale model ship to make it a scale model ship and look and act like a ship is exactly what you would do for a big ship. It's just bigger, obviously, right? And so, like, even with a big airplane, it's still a fucking airplane, just it's bigger. So the engines need to be bigger, or it needs more engines. And so that kind of stuff is just, again, another question you have to ask. Like, does this look right for the scale? Like, going back to the hallway discussion, is my walkway too wide for as big as this building is? Is this engine too big for as small as the plane is? Now, obviously, we're not dealing mechanically here, but if you make a small villa, a small little hut, whatever logic you use to plan that out and decorate it and conceptualize it, you should be able to apply and scale up indefinitely. The big hurdle, I feel like, is the mental weight of it, which is why I would recommend breaking things down into zones yourself during your production. Construction occurs in stages. It's not just all done at once like that, unless you're Japan fixing a road after an earthquake. They do that shit in 60 seconds or less. Money back guaranteed. But when you're like me, you got a real job, wife, kid, a business, all these other obligations, court cases with Elon Musk, yada yada. you're very limited in your time, which is one of the reasons why me and my wife are so willing and forthright about, like, yeah, we went into creative and just copied that chiseled piece over because it was 100 times. And I don't want to spend my time playing the game with my wife in my spare time doing this monotonous task over and over again. I already do that for my day job. You know what I mean? And like, there is something about this game with chores. Like, chores are super important, and I do love doing them, like going and harvesting the wheat and cutting down the grass and cutting the trees. It's a nice little break. It makes me feel like a real homesteader, even though I've done that shit in real life myself. It's nice simulation. It is. But the idea of I need this to look like this all over this wall, so I have to chisel this exact thing 37,000 times. No, it's murder, okay? I don't blame anybody who, like me, either uses mods, which I don't do, or uses creative, which I do, to make things a little bit easier. So one, if you're in survival or in single player playing with friends, or like you have access to the server controls, or you do have mods, whatever it is that makes your shit easier, feel free to do it, man. Like, if you have a really badass window that you chiseled out and you don't want to do that again, use World Edit or use Creative or whatever it is, or a mod, whatever it is you got to do to make it easier to make 7 more of those windows, because the windows are badass and you put effort into it, but your time is not, like, it's not worth it to spend your time doing that. It's a game, for one. For two, you might be the only motherfucker that sees it. And for three, like, it's just you building a cathedral. In real life, it would not just be you building a cathedral. So, to kind of talk about this in more detail, this is the space where me and my wife, we are going to buy traders for rusty gears. We're just going to throw the gears away and then spawn a trader. But we're going to populate a village nearby with these traders. So that way our estate is not the center of the civilization here. We're just a very well-off, industrious people off nearby this established cultural center, which is going to be this village. And as you can see, I have used the creative color blocks to kind of map stuff out, which you can't really see on the map too well because everything's snowed on. But you can see how, like, the red there, I have that color-coded. The red is my path. This is where my roads are going to be. The yellow I have is like walls and stuff. This was all yellow before I went through and replaced it. But the dock is also yellow. And then I have the buildings done in blue. So, and you can see I'm kind of doing the thing where I have like a rough footprint laid out. Like, it's not even a full, complete rectangle. It's not even lined up right. But that right there is whereabouts and about the size and about the shape that I want that build to be. And so, if you were to do this with a cathedral, you wouldn't do, I want this building here, I want my dock here, the gateway is going to be over there. You don't even necessarily have to color code it. You could use the just dirt blocks just to visualize in your mind, like, where things are going to go. I cannot stress enough the value of keeping stacks and stacks and stacks of barren or low fertility soil on you for this explicit purpose. You can map stuff out. You don't have to color code it. I did that to make my life easier, but you can definitely just map stuff out using packed dirt or barren soil or whatever it is you want to use. But since I'm doing a village here, I mapped out the buildings and the production zones and stuff like that, much like I did with my estate. But if you're doing a build, like a building as one build, like let's keep using the cathedral or castle example, you would put where the entrance is, where the pews go, where the throne is, where the podium is, where the windows are, and you would kind of frame those out. Those aspects would be your zone. You wouldn't frame out just one rectangle, like, oh, yeah, my cathedral's going to go in this rectangle. You wouldn't do that. You would do a circle or rectangle for this tower, and then a bigger rectangle for, like, the main space, and maybe it has this side space off to the side, so there's a smaller little square attached to it. You would just zone it out more. And like, this is really, like, actually going through and laying out the foundation physically, mapping it out. Even if you just want to hop into creative and use the actual blocks you want to use and then, like, do a mock-up first, visualizing it in the game is a huge helper. So, like, you've answered all your questions, you're kind of getting it figured out, you know about how tall you want the walls to be, you know about what materials you're going to use, you know you know what you want the building to do and how you want it to feel. Those questions have been answered now. Mock it up. Do you go into creative or just use the soil and survival, whatever your limitations or willingness is, and just mock it up. Once you have it mocked up and you're fairly happy with how you want things to be, look what I'm doing, man. I'm taking it one step at a time. That's all. Like I said, 1 foot in front of the other, 1 block at a time. It's all you can do. Just like with real life, man. Like, day in, day out, just one day at a time, one task at a time. I know all the tasks in real life overlap and contradict and make it difficult. Those sons of bitches. But the cool thing about a game like this is it's a lot easier of pacing. It's one thing at a time, okay? So I went out here and we I'm gonna have to cough again. I'm so sorry. We went out here and we mocked this up with the colored blocks. Now we're going through, gathering the resources, making the building blocks, taking our time, and doing this project. And that's something you think about it. Now, if you go into creative mode and you're just building a cathedral so you can show it off on Reddit, or you just want to have the thing as an asset or whatever it is, you're just doing a build. You can take your time with it, man. You don't have to actually create the resource or anything like we're doing here. But the same logic applies. You can take your time. You don't have to do the whole cathedral at once. You can do the towers first. You can mock out everything and like, oh, I'm going to work on this wall today. Or maybe I'll bust out the windows and then do the wall around the windows. You know, there's so many different ways you can cut labor down. And so I like to think of it as, man, like, remember being in, I don't know if maybe you're still in school or maybe you used to be in school. I used to be in school decades ago. But sitting in there and looking at the damn analog clock and knowing that I have an hour in this class, that was murder. But 6 sets of 10 minutes? That's not so bad. 2 sets of 30? I could do 2 half hours. That's not so bad. But a whole hour? God, no, that is too much for the psyche. It really is crazy how easily dissuaded or persuaded the human mind is just by how overwhelming or impending something can be. And, like, a watched pot never boils, right? So if you're sitting here constantly looking at you building a cathedral, the cathedral will never get done. Some people argue, like, sit there, sit down, do it, focus on it, do it till it's done. Maybe it's my autism, maybe it's my ADHD, maybe it's my laziness, I don't know. But I don't want to do that. Don't get me wrong. I have moments, I'm just sitting here staring at a blank screen, but I have moments where I will hyper-focus, and I will definitely bust it out and go all ham on it. But then there are other times where I just can't. Like, I want to do it. Like, I want to do the build. I want to make this thing. I just don't have the energy or the intestinal fortitude to facilitate it, to make it happen. So just do bits at a time. If you're anything like me, little bit here and there, like I've said before in the other videos, pennies add up. And the biggest example of that I can think of is my roads. Like, I did not do these roads all at once, and they're still not even finished. This was in stages, and like, look here, I have this laid out for like a Western kind of build. Haven't gotten to it yet, man. Do I want to do this? Yes, I really want to do this, really want to get it done. I want to chisel it, I want to show it off. It's going to be awesome. I haven't done it yet, and this is not even a large build, but you can see I've already mocked it up. I've got the wood there. I know about the size. I even know about like where the door and window placements are going to be. It's there. Now, this may change and everything as I approach it, but you're just going to be doing the same thing on a larger scale, okay? I really don't know what more to show you guys. Like, that's really all there is to talk about. I thought about maybe going into creative mode and kind of blocking it out and talking about it in even more detail than that. But you guys are smart people. You guys are already builders. You guys are already creative individuals. You're just missing, I think you're really just missing me telling you to do it. Just do it, man. Like, that's the biggest instruction I can give you. No matter how impending or overwhelming it seems, it's a game, and you're playing it, and you have fun doing it. And, like, yeah, you might have to fight off some drifters. Yeah, you got to go worry about food and all this other stuff. But the point of the game is to do these builds. So how do I approach a big build? One block at a time, man. No matter how you view what big is. If it's tall, if it's long, giggity, wide, deep, giggity, super detailed, okay? No matter how you approach it, it is one step at a time. But you're going to start with asking questions. What do I want this to do? Where is it going to go? What resources do I have? How much room do I need to do this thing? Is that enough room? Is that too much room? Does this much room to do this thing look right in comparison to the room that I've afforded myself over here in the other part of the build? Does this build look too big? Is the roof too big for the size of the walls? Those kinds of questions are the things you're going to have to answer in your specific situation. But I promise you that as you start asking yourself those questions and you're looking at the space, the answers will reveal themselves to you. You will be limited by mechanics in the game. You'll be limited by your resources. You'll be limited by your own willingness. So do whatever it is you're going to do. Just do it. And I know that sounds so goofy, but literally, just do it. But for practical tips with conceptualizing, answer those questions first, okay? Mark out your space, get your tool sets together, figure out what you want it to be, and then if you're in survival, take your time gathering the resources. Think about what you want the materials to be and get putting those together. Get big old boxes of stuff. That's a little mini game in itself. Go to the build site, put down some chests, fill that sucker up with everything you think you're going to need to do that job. And Then once you have, or while you're doing that, or once you have it, go plot it out. Lay out the blocks of like dirt or colored wool or whatever it is you're going to use. Display it. Make it visual in your head and look at it. Some people can look at a piece of marble and they can see the statue in it. Some people need to take a pencil and draw it on the marble before they can really, really see what's hiding inside that stone. It's okay, whichever one you are. Just understand which one you are. And if you need a pencil, use a pencil. But once you got it mocked up, once you got the resources together, it is the exact same way as approaching a smaller build. You are just scaling it up. So if you find your small builds are really detailed and you're really happy with them and like they look good and they function well and you don't really have any criticisms or complaints against yourself. Again, I'm very critical of myself. You don't have to be as critical of yourself as I am. I probably will not be as critical of y'all as I am of myself. So don't be mean to yourselves. But if you're happy with what you see at whatever scale you're currently building, I would say you're safe to just scale it up. Instead of, 7 blocks long, make it 14 blocks long. Just try doubling it and giving it to the next guy, And then if you're happy with that, scale up a little bit more. Maybe you don't want to build one big castle right out the gate like I was talking about not doing. Maybe you do want to do it in increments. Maybe you'll build the watchtower first, then you'll do the walls. And now you have a defined wall space. Now you're boxed in. Now the castle has to fit inside these walls. Boom. You've kind of answered some of your questions already. Now you have to work within these constraints that you've given yourself. I'm sorry. I really don't know what more to say about it. I am not a tutorial guy, and I don't want to go through and do a bunch of editing and put all this stuff together and do all that influencer stuff. This is raw what I think and how I approach problem solving. And it's not just with building. This is how I approach problems with everything. What does it need to do? What is it doing? What can it do? What should it do? What should it not do? Where can it do it? How long can it do it? What happens when it can't do it? I ask those questions all the time about everything, from relationships to work to building fucking buildings in this game. So if there's anything I've kind of like touched on in here, but I did not go into it in enough detail, like you want to know more about clutter, you want to know more about decorating, or you want to see what some mock-ups might look like if you were to mock up a building, I'll be happy to do those things. Just tell me you want me to do it, and I'll do it. I just didn't want to overload you guys too much in this video. It's already rather long anyway, but I did want to get the thoughts out there and present them to you because you guys are all very intelligent and very creative. So I'm certain that, I feel certain that what I'm saying is going to fill in the gaps that you have. And I'm almost 100% confident that all you really needed was somebody to tell you, do it. So thank you guys for tuning in for this little spiel, this TED Talk, I guess, about scaling up in Vintage Story. Because you don't have to scale up in size. You can scale up in complexity. You can scale up in detail. And really, it can go all the way down. You can make very small detail or very small builds exceptionally large in their aura, in detail and depth. And if you're not ready to scale up your small builds, all you're going to get is big, empty, expensive, time-consuming boxes. And although this is a game of cubes, you should try to make it not a cube. So if there's anything else you guys want to know, let me know. If this answered your questions, concerns, maybe inspires you in some way, fantastic. I'm so happy to hear it. Let me know down in the comments what you can take away from this, what I need to do differently, what you can contribute to this discussion, again, obviously. And then, like I said, if there's something in this video in particular that, oh, well, that's an interesting concept, but you did not talk about it nearly enough, let me know, and I will talk about it more. I love talking. So thank you guys so much. You guys are very appreciated. We're going to wrap up the Midwestern Goodbye with the typical stay alive and stay happy.